பெருமைதான். இப்ப ஒரு வீட்டுல போய் குடி வந்து ஒரு ரூபாய் கூட்டு வந்து எடுத்துக்கிது. கோழி போட்டு ஒரு ரூபாய் எடுத்து மாட்டேங்குது.
काय करू हे असे हे रोज करायचा आपला परती पण जाते तेवढीच पण जाते तेवढीच जाते 70 रुपये दिले नाही तर 50 दिले.
We should start in 1 minute time.
Yes, sir. I'm ready, sir. Yeah.
And there's a little change in the presentation. I think Bangladesh comes first.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay.
She has requested that translation comes in first.
Okay, fine.
So she's going to speak in a language which is going to be translated to somebody in English.
Okay, okay. So the second will be Miss Pavitra, isn't it?
Yeah. So we start.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Thank you. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from whichever part of the world that you all come from. I am Gangadharan. I have great pleasure in inviting you to be part of the 5th day of the webinar series that we have organized on the theme of social work profession and geriatric care vis-a-vis current roles, challenges, and emerging trends. In the last 4 days, we had the pleasure and the delight of speakers numbering to little over 14, speaking on this very important subject, and they made sure that we all liked the sessions and learned something from each of them. Distinguished speakers of this morning: Mrs. Salina Akhtar, Pavitra, Yoshina from South Africa, Dr. Sigamani Panir from Madurai, India, Mr. Michael Gaudumas from Greece. It's a pleasure to have you amongst us.
Hello to everybody.
Beloved partners, in our efforts to host this 6-day webinars, 2-hour webinars, Mr. Mangaleshwaran from the Bharatidasan University, who's been very kind and gracious enough to accept to moderate today's 2-hour session, Dr. Lakshmi from the Central University of Kerala, who was very instrumental in getting this program on ground, Dr. Paneet Sigamani, who's going to be our speaker, but who's also a partner representing the Central University of Tamil Nadu from Madurai, Dr. Chenavir from Central University of Karnataka, who made a very impressive presentation yesterday. Dr. Nalini from Pondicherry University, who will be chairing the sessions tomorrow, an important closing ceremony tomorrow, an important day for us. Dr. Chandramouli from University of Mysore, who chaired the session on the third day of this webinar. Dr. Leena Ashok from Manipal Academy for Higher Education from Manipal, who has not been able to come on screen as frequently as we wish her to be. And Dr. Raja Samuel, Principal, Madras School of Social Work. We are delighted to have you all amongst us and partnering with us to host this 6-day, 2-hour webinars. We also are grateful to the delegates who have come from more than 25 countries. Speakers have come from 25 countries. Delegates have come from 25 countries. A large number of delegates have been coming. Yes, I think evening time from India point of view, it does not suit a lot of countries. So therefore, the number is reduced a bit. Nevertheless, our numbers are not less for for the speakers to be motivated and inspired. I really don't want to talk about the need for having this team of social work. Having been in this field for more than 30 years of time, I feel social workers have significant role to play in taking care of the elderly, be it in institutions or in the communities or while serving the home care services. I think all of us heard extensively the services being offered in the United States, in which two speakers beautifully and very narratively said what exactly the social workers are doing. And I'm definitely very happy that from the Indian point of view, there are government-aided old age homes in South India and across the country. There are minimum 350 to 400 social workers engaged as a matter of mandate by these old age homes. The government of India makes part of his salaries. I have visited many of them. I've interacted with a lot of them. Many of them are doing excellent job, considering we've come from a culture which is extremely, I don't want to use the word complicated, but it's heterogeneous. You go to every place, different villages, different districts, different languages. Let me tell you, social workers are doing a great job here. You may not be able to recognize how much they really do because we don't have that kind of a documentation system. So we also realize, and I've attempted to call a lot of countries to talk on the social work, not many countries are utilizing social workers as much as they should, particularly with respect to the aging population, which is growing in big numbers. I think these 4 days have been eye-opener to many, particularly people in the academia and research, and also a lot of social workers and students who are pursuing career, who intend pursuing career in geriatric care. I don't think we need to mention what is the real role that they are playing, how important they are. And I'm very sure today's 5 speakers, today we are going to have a tough time because we have 5 speakers unlike the past. We have 5 speakers, therefore we are giving them 15 minutes to talk. And we are going to, I think the moderator of today is going to have a tough time, moderating it because he has got a responsibility not only to moderate the 15 minutes, I think speakers would stick to the 15 minutes, but he has also to, very carefully pick up the questions from the chat box. So he's able to post to at least each one of them one question, if not more, depending on the time that is available, Chair. So I know that moderator today and tomorrow will have very difficult times because we have a lot of speakers coming in there. Now, before I close in and welcome all of you, when I welcome all of you, I just want to make sure that I make those reminders. Number 1, kindly remain muted. If you unmute, you are really going to disturb the faculty who are going to make a free flow of conversations. Kindly remain muted. 2, use the chat box as much as you want to make comments about what is being said. Kindly do not use the chat box to promote any of your personal, business, personal activities. We are not interested in this conference on promoting those personal communication. Please stay within your limits to ensure that you are focused towards what is being said today. and what could be said. Now we have from Bangladesh a speaker who's going to talk the language Bengali, but there's going to be a translator. So this time is going to be a little less for us. And Dr. Mangaleshwaran, moderator, will have to carefully ensure that she sticks to the time, including translation. Next is feedback. Few people have been struggling to get the feedback because if they're taking long time to fill up, the Zoom link is closed. So therefore ensure that when the feedback form is placed in the chat box, you immediately take time because it does not take more than 2 minutes to do so. And those of you who want PowerPoint, please write to us at the end of the 6 days program. We'll be very happy to share with them if they are with us, available with us. And with this, I think it's my pleasure to invite all of you, including Dr. Mangaleshwar and all the team members of the program, and both international and national participants and speakers, to enjoy your next 2 hours of time. With this, I hand over this to Dr. Mangaleshwaran. Wish you best of luck, Dr. Mangaleshwaran. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you present here for this 6 days virtual international conference on the social work profession and geriatric care, the current roles, challenges, and emerging trend. And this is the penultimate day of this 6 days program. Indeed, I should thank Dr. Gangadharan for giving this great opportunity, not only to the Bharadasani University and 7 other institutions, because this, I think, this is one of the greatest event for this year, right? That's a great sign that he has culled out almost all the major institutions of social work in South India. So from Madras School of Social Work, Central University of Kerala, Mysore University, Bharatiyar University, Pondicherry University, Bharatdasan University, then Central University of Tamil Nadu, and Manipal Academy of Higher Education. And this is, as he said, that almost 14 speakers have already enriched with several knowledges pertaining to the geriatric care. And almost, I think 10 more speakers are left out, and with 6 chairpersons. And there were about 17 countries, right? The speakers from 17 countries, they have come out with various ideas, various knowledge pertaining to the geriatric care. Today, we have speakers from Bangladesh, South Africa, Greece, and 2 from India. And it's a very delight thing that we have having a great evening at India. And I also welcome all the participants who are watching this program live through the Facebook and also through Zoom platform. So without taking much of the time, right? So let me, as already the things laid down by Dr. Gangadharan. So please, speakers, kindly be specific to 15 minutes of your presentation, right? So that we would get an ample of opportunity for to listen to others also. And also toward the end, you can have a kind of discussion, right? So that would be also fine if the opportunity is also given to the participant to throw some of the ideas, or in fact maybe the queries in case they have, if any, right? So we have around the 5 speakers today. So let me take the privilege of introducing the first speaker of the day. Miss Salina Akhtar from Bangladesh. I'm just happy to introduce Miss Salina Akhtar. She is the General Secretary of Subrata Trust, Managing Director of Subrata Social Enterprise Limited, Bangladesh. She studied social science in 1992 from Lamitia Mohila College, Dhaka. Among the awards you won, few include Bangladeshi Business Award in 2000, about 2 decades back by DHL, and Daily Star Outstanding Woman in Business. And she is a Ashoka Fellowship Awardee in 2014. So this is a brief introduction regarding Shalina Akhtar. So with these few words of welcome, I welcome Ms. Shalina Akhtar to take over the session. And please, the translator, kindly inform her that including the translation, it can be confined to 15 minutes. So, madam, it's over to you, please. I think, can you introduce the translator so that we can the August audience, the participant can also know who is the translator, please, because I have not seen who is the translator.
আজকের ওয়েবিনারের হোস্ট ডক্টর গঙ্গাধারন এবং আজকের অন্যান্য দেশের স্পিকার গেস্ট গুড ইভিনিং। আমরা বাংলাদেশে জেরিয়াট্রিক কেয়ারে কাজ করছি। আমাদের আজকের কাজের প্রেজেন্টেশনটি করবেন আমাদের অ্যাডভাইজার সৌরভ রায়।
Who is the translator, please? May I know? Because I'm not able to see the translator.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. So can you please introduce yourself so that the people, I don't have any biodata, so please introduce yourself, please. Just a minute. Yeah, please.
Awesome. Thank you, Heritage Foundation, for inviting us. My name is Saurav Roy. I'm a volunteer and the advisor for Subarta Trust. Today, because of the language barrier, I'm more than happy to share the work and the work that Subarta Trust has been doing in the Bangladesh. And I think hopefully by the end of this 15 minutes, I'll try to keep it within 12 minutes so that we have at least few minutes for discussion. And I think the aim of the presentation is to kind of get the participants an understanding of the story of Bangladesh with perspective to elderly geriatric care. I have made a small presentation and please feel free to put down your questions or thoughts at the end of it. We'd love to explore some of those discussions. The host of the organization has disabled the screen sharing. So if I could request, if I have the permission.
Is it you? So Mr. Saurav, you are going to share the
Yes.
Please give him co-host. So where is Saurav? Yeah, I'll make.
Go ahead, do it.
No, I'll do it. No, but I think they have
Been done. It's been
done.
done.
Now it's done.
Done.
Now you can share your screen, please.
Perfect. I hope everyone is able to see the screen.
Not yet.
No, you have to screen it first. You have to click
No,
it.
you click the screen. Share screen, please. Mr. Saurav.
Perfect. I think.
Yeah, you click the share screen and open the particular file which you want to display, please.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah,
we can able to hear you, but thing is that you share the screen, please. You click the share screen. Have you just done it?
See, that is the reason I requested you people to send it in advance. Exactly the reason.
Yeah.
I've been repeatedly telling you all to send it in advance so that it's not causing inconvenience to others. Repeatedly, I've told them. Only you are not sent it.
Yeah, now it's coming. Yeah, please.
Good. Thanks.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, go ahead. Madam, please proceed. Ask Mr. Saurav. Ask Madam to make her presentation because we are running short of time now. So we have to already now it's 7:47 of Indian Standard Time. Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Ask Madam to make a presentation.
She can talk in the meanwhile. Even
yes, she can start talking, and so that you can translate.
Perfect, perfect. No, I
Yeah.
think I'm so sorry for the internet glitch. I hope everyone can hear me now.
We can hear you. Please start.
Perfect. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of share the presentation that I just made. I think we shared it last night. Everything is just the same. I hope everyone is able to see the screen.
No, one
Yes.
minute. You're not. Don't get confused. You never shared anything with us last night because the first time you're coming.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I think I did share it with the team. So I apologize, Dr. Gangadharan, if there was a
Yeah.
confusion. All right.
Okay, you ask Madam to proceed so that you can make the translation, isn't it, Mr.
He
Saurav?
started. He started. He started.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Cool. So let's begin with the first aspect. I think the today's presentation is going to be about helping looking at understanding the case and the scenario of looking at Bangladesh as a case study. A couple of the things that we're going to cover today is the state of geriatric and elderly care in Bangladesh, and some of the challenges and the gap in the sector, and what essentially Subarta is doing to address those specific needs. For today's presentation, we have given a very thorough focus on the care, education, and the research aspect, and some of these emerging trends. So sorry, there is a bit of a glitch. All right, so looking at the case study of Bangladesh in particular, there is apparently within South Asia, there is a common understanding that it is one of the youngest population, but people don't realize that as it is one of the youngest population, it's going to increase in the next by 2050 and 2000. The amount of people who are going to cross the 60s is quite aggressive growths, and it's predicted in Bangladesh it's going to increase by 6-fold. And 50% of these people who are crossing the age of 60 trying to ask for special housing and geriatric care, they essentially are either unable to afford it or access it because of many reasons in terms of money, accessibility, culture, and so on and so forth. And in particular to Bangladesh's case study, majority of these people who wants to access this geriatric care essentially lives in the rural part of Bangladesh because of its agrarian economy. Some of the systemic forces at play, and I think a lot of people who are in this field would know that the trend in the nuclear family structure, the integration of women in the workforce, and especially for the countries in the global south where there is no welfare system, has led to this rigorous gap and a systemic gap created for the elderly and the geriatric care. And then the last piece, which is very, very critical to understand, is the neoliberalization that happened during the 90s, and especially the world that we live in today is a very capitalist neoliberal structure that essentially does not mathematically encompass the care economy as a value creator. It does not account in the GDP, which is a very, very structural gap that misses out the state and the role of these informal important aspect. And there is a new more and more academic study which is coming out more and more as how can we really account this informal care economy into the aspect of how do we essentially encompass the wealth of a nation. So more and more interesting stuff is coming out. So the key question that Subarta essentially wanted to explore as Salina started her work in early 2000 was how will the values and culture and things will change in the Bangladesh society as more and more people, because of the increased life expectancy, is going to grow, and how essentially the innovations of today in terms of biomedics and other things is going to pave a better future for reinventing the retirement aspect in the country when you don't have a social welfare system and young people don't know how to really plan out their retirement. So some of these very critical key questions started Salina to start her work in Subarta. And to be honest, all these questions are in progress. None of them are answered yet, but essentially more and more work is coming out and we are trying to explore more how some of these questions can be answered. And through those work essentially brought out Subarta's trust and the lens through the work to understand some of the critical systemic gaps. And I think this is going to be very critical for the audience to understand. And I feel like a lot of people would be able to empathize with some of these systemic gaps. So the number one was the care professional and the integrated care system. That just does not exist in Bangladesh. That there is a really shortage of professional caregiver in the sector. Even if you have a lot of money, you want to put more money to provide care to your parents or to yourself, there is just a shortage of people who are well equipped to give you that care. And today, even if you have a lot of money, there is a very lack of infrastructure to provide you that professional caregiving at a client's doorstep. So that was one of the first systemic gap. The second was housing infrastructure. That today it's very much under the umbrella called take shelter approach, which is not providing the holistic security and customized quality care services. There is no housing infrastructure where you could go and buy, and that will provide you a proper care system. So there was a housing problem, and today all the things are pretty much encompassed in the kind of old age home kind of stuff. And there was a systemic gap in the terms of, can we create a new housing infrastructure that is going to provide this essential care for people who needs them, especially the elderly. The third one is a very interesting one, which is called care education and the research. Today, all the research that comes out in terms of geriatric comes from a very medical standpoint, which leaves behind the aspect that the things that the complex issue that we are trying to solve is essentially emotional, mental, and even spiritual in some aspect. And if you just look it through a medical standpoint, we leave out a big chunk of the problem. And essentially the care education and research, Subarta is trying to push for looking at this problem, complex problem, from a very intersectional lens. And there is systemic gap in terms of the education and the research that gets produced in the country. And the final one is finance. There is no currently mechanism for people like me who are young, physically able and financially able to essentially plan out their retirement housing. And essentially these were the 4 critical gaps that Subarta identified in the beginning years and seeked to fix all of these 4 issues. And fortunately, in the last 2 decades, there has been really significant progress made in all of these 4 aspects in terms of creating more holistic professional, to housing infrastructure, to creating more new research, and then creating a finance structure to fix that issue. One thing that kind of really separates different than other players in the ecosystem is we really see aging as a source of innovation. We don't see it as a problem, but as an opportunity for today and tomorrow. And that is a specific lens that we use, because aging in itself has a negative connotation in the culture we live today. And we really want to move away from that. It's essentially the similar kind of lens where we see climate change as a problem, but now we trying to see it as a place of innovation and resilience. So we want to use that same lens. Subarta Trust has been kind of pioneering its mission of creating an integrated care system and profession. As you can see this beautiful lady in the picture. She's one of the selected and scholars who was one of the bright childs from the rural parts of Bangladesh, and through going through Subarta's integrated program, she became a professional who gives out this care. And there are thousands and thousands of people, young girls and boys like her, who's championing the care aspect. The second part is care education and science. The third mission is creating a housing, and the fourth one is care finance. Please do stop me at any point if any of that. I'm going through it very quickly. I do have a stopwatch in front of me, so I do want to make it quick and make sure we leave a moderator enough time for discussion. So for today's, I think, presentation, because of the interesting topic the Heritage Foundation of India took and led a leadership role getting people together, we do want to focus on the one vertical out of the 4 vertical that we talk about what is essentially care education and research when Subarta talks about it, and what is this essential vision. The first vision is essentially care faculty. What we mean by that, we want to create essentially a care faculty within school curricula, and that starts from elementary to graduate and even PhD level, where people understand and study this care from not just from a medical standpoint, but from a holistic lens, that what essentially what do we mean by care and how do we understand and study it. And Subarta is doing critical work trying to really integrate that in the education system, especially in the rural part. The second one is professional. As I've already spoke about, we're trying to create new language and new nomenclature within the care professional industry, where we move beyond just caregivers and carers. We want to create new carologists and care specialists, developing new professionals who are not only powerful and strong in terms of medical aspect, but also non-medical care. And this non-medical aspect is a very, very strong aspect in Subarta's vision and thinking. So our vision in terms of care education is to create that faculty from elementary to PhD level. Second is to go beyond this caregivers aspect and create new carologists and care specialists. So new people in the economy that could participate in this industry. And the third one is non-medical care industry. This is Salina's very, very strong push within the Bangladesh's complex problem, that we need to look at non-medical care as a preventive strategy. People should not just go to medical, because usually the medical aspect is the last resort when things have really gone off the hand. But through Salina's experience, we have seen, like, if you start giving the non-medical care and giving the emotional, spiritual, and all those aspects need met for the people who are vulnerable, they don't end up in the need for the medical care aspect. So there is this push of expanding and institutionalizing the non-medical care aspect, which is a bigger piece of the larger problem. So these are the vision that Subarta Trust is trying to do in the vertical of care education and research. The ongoing work, we are very happy to share that the rural focus has been a big one, because as I said in the beginning, the majority of the people who wants to access these services lives in the rural parts because of the agrarian economy. We have created one-stop care solution. So if you are an old person who wants to access these services, there is this one-stop care station that people can go and not only access information, but also access care. We have micro care entrepreneurs, as you can see in the photo, who are essentially graduates, high school graduates, college graduates, who are turning to become care entrepreneurs who can go door to door and essentially provide these micro care services. And then the third one is care assessment, where we constantly do assessment and survey to make sure that there is no silver bullet to the solution. We constantly add detailed aspect to our care model in the rural. The second part of that ongoing work is skill development. As you can see that a lot of these profession requires a lot of training, and producing high quality professional with long-term employment opportunity is something that we do. Unfortunately, Subarta Trust has a partnership with a university, Alabama University, if I'm not wrong, with the United States. And through their partnerships, we are building curriculum to provide this very high quality care program. And we are making that possible in the rural Bangladesh. The third one is, I think Dr. Gangadharan said during the initial that some of these things gets missed out during documentation, because we, especially in the social sector, we don't have a strong muscle in documenting our work. And we are essentially making sure that all that we do is properly documented so that it can be replicated by the government or by any players in the ecosystem, because the problem is so big that we want to make sure that people take up our ideas and run with it. So essentially, we are trying to create care publication that pretty much publicizes all our modules or all the verticals of our work. We are designing syllabus for education, as I shared, from secondary, high school to master's level. And suddenly, lastly, training modules and manuals for making sure we are creating more and more high quality trained professional. I have 1 more minute, so I'll quickly go through some of the insights and the emerging trends that is coming out through the global work that we are being part of. The first part is that we are moving away this concept called aging, and we are looking at it through the lens of longevity. And there is a big difference in that, because if you look at from a perspective of not aging but longevity, we go beyond the aspect of age labels. We just don't see this as a problem for old people. We look at it as a problem. We look at it as a problem of how do we make sure we age well and we live well. And then when you look at through that lens, we include many different players, 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds, different people in the sector who can all come together. The second aspect is more and more language that we are trying to do within Subarta is we are trying to put out that all people are at some point in their lives are caregivers or receivers. So everyone is a part of this journey. And it's just not when things go off the roof, that's when you need the care. At some point, you would become a receiver or a giver. And the last aspect is that there is no silver bullet in this complex crisis. We have a part of the solution. People from Greece and South Africa has a part of the solution. From India has a part of the solution. So it's essentially a building industry and a sector. And there is no one solution that will fit everything. One policy, national policy that will fit everything. So there is that realization that is coming out more and more. So I would stop here at this point exactly on 15 minutes. I'll hand it to the moderator for now. I hope you guys enjoy, and I think we would love to engage more in discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Shaurav. That's a really great work that is being done by your organization called Subhatra. And my wishes and congratulations to Shalina Akhtar for doing a very human service, especially for the geriatric care. You have nicely made a very brief and good, excellent presentation. You started with the national scenario, right? So, as you said, 60 and above is being increased by fold by 2050. And you also just mentioned that 50% of the elderly one are widowed and also single. So that is also one of the important message which we have to take it from the experiments of Bangladesh, right? So you'll be staying till end, or you'll be going. You'll be staying till end, Mr. Shaurav?
Yes, I'm here for one more hour, and I think I need to leave. But if there is any question to Salina Appa, would love to take up.
Yeah, okay. So since dear participant, since Shalina Akhtar madam has to leave, can you just post one or two questions to her so that in the chat box, because if we allow you to, because I love to unmute and talk, but since there are about 170 participants, right? So it may not be feasible to unmute and talk. So that if you have a few questions, we will you can just post it. So otherwise, we will go to the second speaker. Meanwhile, just me take the opportunity of introducing the second speaker of the day, right? Miss Pavitra from India. Miss Pavitra is a postgraduate in management from Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. She established a Kestra a decade ago. This is an assisted living facility with 2 units at Hyderabad with a capacity of 110 beds. Besides, she manages heritage home healthcare services at Hyderabad for over 15 years. I'm also happy in welcoming Ms. Pavitra, and she is also happy to. I also happy to introduce that Miss. I think many of you know the Pavitra is the daughter of Dr. Gangadharan also. So that's quite important thing which we all need to know. Now I request Pavitra madam to make her presentation. Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you for the kind introduction. Do I have access to share my screen?
Co-host, madam, you can very well make use of.
Okay, great. Is
Yeah.
it visible?
Yeah, is it? Yeah, fine. To make it full screen. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this forum. I think this discussion is Very well timed because there is a lot of conversation in India right now about elder care services, and a lot of individuals, organizations are starting to take a very active role in getting involved in delivering these services, whether it's in the charitable format, not-for-profit or for-profit format. And I think it's a nice learning for all of us who are already in this space and who are trying to kind of transition from being pegged as an informal sector into more of a formal sector. It's a nice learning for us to see how professional social workers can contribute qualitatively in the way we deliver services. So, so I'm a student of management from the Indian School of Business. I have been with Heritage Healthcare Services for almost 15 years now, involved in the home healthcare services. And I am also the founder of Kshetra Assisted Living and Dementia Care Facility. We operate 2 units in Hyderabad, and we're in our 9th year now. So I will be talking today about our experience in how we have engaged social workers in the services which we deliver, and how we value the contributions that have been made by them over the years. So in the interest of time, I'm going to jump right into the conversation. So basically, the 2 services that we provide are the home care services, where we send trained caregivers who are basically not qualified nurses. These are healthcare aides who assist elderly who are living in their own homes, who prefer to live with their families. These caregivers are trained to assist them with what we call activities of daily living. So it's basically a lot of physical assistance and to some extent companionship and emotional support. And in the assisted living facility, our focus is on looking after elderly whose care needs have gone beyond what can be delivered in the home front. So we are not a medical center, but we provide short-term and long-term care to the elderly who need it. And our focus is largely on delivering dementia care. So more than 70% of our inmates are living with some form of dementia. So to give you a context that we kind of operate within, the geriatric care services that we offer are privately paid for. We are a private limited organization. We don't have any funding from the government. We don't expect any funding from them. And as you're aware, in India, geriatric care services in the private space are not yet covered by insurance. They are largely paid for by the families of the care recipients. And even the role of professional social workers or professional psychologists is not really defined by any regulation for the private players in this space. And so the use of such professionally qualified staff is largely dependent on the discretion of the management, depending on what their qualitative goals are and what their budgetary capacity is. As far as our organization is concerned, we've always had a multidisciplinary team. And for us, it starts with the administrators. We have qualified nurses who look after the clinical aspects. We have the trained caregivers who provide the physical assistance and the caregiving support. We have a clinical psychologist who takes the lead in the dementia care aspect of the service. And apart from the doctors, the social workers have always been a part of both the services that we provide. So I'll first talk about the scope of involvement that the social worker has always had in our home care services. So when we send caregivers to the homes of elderly, our objective is always twofold. One is we want to assist in alleviating the caregiving stress that families feel to a large extent in managing elderly care at home. It can be extremely draining physically, emotionally, and financially. And while we acknowledge that once we send a caregiver onto the premises of the family, there's only so much that we can control in that environment. We try our best to monitor care to the extent possible that we are aiding them in feeling some kind of relief. And the second objective is that a lot of these caregivers are coming to us. They're mostly migrant labor. They're not very highly educated. And they're coming with the expectation of earning a decent salary, a good livelihood, a job prospect. A lot of them continue to pursue their education while they're working with us. So it's also our objective to ensure that while we are giving them this opportunity to work and earn a living, that we are doing it while ensuring that they're safe, that they're secure, and that the dignity of the labor that they're engaged in is actually preserved. And to fulfill both these objectives, the social worker has always played a rather dominant role in the way we deliver our home care services. So it starts with the home visits. So, if you're considering giving services to any family, for us, it's important to ensure that the home visit is done by the social worker, in which they usually assess whether the home is the right setting for the elderly person to be in to begin with, whether the medical needs have gone beyond the scope of what the care can be given at home, and at the same time to ensure that the home is safe, the neighborhood is safe, that the caregivers are going to be looked after in that premises. And then we do the care needs assessment to understand what the physical needs are, what the medical case history is of the individual, and what kind of support they're looking for from a caregiver. So we are very clear in the scope of the services that we provide, in that this is purely physical assistance for the elderly person. It is not housekeeping, it is not a cook, it's not a maid. And the social worker really plays a significant role in communicating that effectively to the families, so that we ensure that there is no exploitation of the caregivers that are being sent for the home care service. And there's also a lot of care planning that needs to be done. So in the context of what are the services, what is the care that the elderly person needs at home? Is it just the caregiving? Is it the physiotherapy? Is it periodic counseling? Are they going through any depression? Do they need some kind of psychiatric evaluation? So all of this is done in consultation with and hand in hand with the family. And then the social worker then comes back and works with the administrative team in coordinating all of this and ensuring that it's delivered in a timely manner and reviewing it periodically. Now, the skill set that we largely depend on the social worker for in the home care setting is the counseling aspect. So you're talking about families that are extremely stressed because caregiving is very stressful. You're talking about elderly people who are feeling helpless, who are who are feeling a loss of independence, who are possibly not in the peak of their mental health. And then you're also talking about caregivers who are coming from rather impoverished backgrounds. They have a lot of family pressures themselves. They're going through God knows what emotionally. So these are three very highly emotionally charged participants in the equation. And so there's a lot of constant balancing that the social worker has to do in terms of what does one expect from the other. So there's a lot of scope for misunderstandings, the cultural issues that come up. There are issues that come up because India has so many religions and we are coming from so many different backgrounds, and something as small as I want a girl who's not wearing a bindi, or I want a girl who's wearing a bindi, I want a girl who dresses a certain way, I want my caregiver to speak a certain language. So there are a lot of cultural, socio-cultural dynamics at play over here, and a lot of emotional stress that each of these persons in the equation tends to express. And so the social worker plays a very, very important role in counseling them all the time to ensure that there is no compromise in the care that's being delivered by the caregiver, and also the experience that the care recipient ultimately has. The more critical areas where we tend to involve them in home care is unfortunate instances of exploitation or abuse of the caregiver in the homes. So there are one-off instances where most of these caregivers are young women. So there is a tendency for some of these family members, or even an elderly person with, let's say, cognitive impairment, to try to sexually exploit them or to be sexually inappropriate. And there's also a tendency for them to exploit them because they are labor available in the house. So let's turn them into a housekeeper, let's turn them into a cook, let's turn them into a nanny. So a lot of this has to be managed, and that's where we kind of involve the social worker for a lot of firefighting. The other instance would be of elder abuse. So there are a lot of families where the stress becomes too much for the family caregivers to really handle, and there is a tendency for them to take it out physically. And we've seen some very unfortunate instances where some of the families manhandle their parents, or it ends up in a fracture or a fall. And going to the authorities is one thing, but also handling the emotional, the dilemma of how to really cope with this kind of a stress is where we kind of we provide a supportive role there. And there are a lot of issues that come up when we are, providing a caregiver for somebody living with dementia on the home front. a lot of behavioral issues that are constantly, symptoms that are constantly changing. Not everybody understands it. Dementia is a little known subject in India, so a lot of families think that the symptoms that somebody living with Alzheimer's or dementia is displaying is intended. It is done with intent. It is done to irk a reaction, and again, that leads to a lot of misunderstandings. Caregivers don't want to work with somebody who's incontinent or who talks all the time or who wanders or is tends to get aggressive. So there's a lot of counseling that needs to be done in this aspect as well. So as far as the home care services is concerned, yeah, it's a very dominant role that the social worker plays. They're kind of the glue that holds the program together. Next, we have the care facility. So our objective in the in the terms of what services we want to deliver in the care facility are concerned, is we understand that families will only, in India at least, the families only consider moving their elderly family members into a care facility when they have literally tried every other option. This is a last-ditch effort. It's not an easy decision. It is emotionally draining to think that you have to take your father or your mother or your grandparents into a care facility. So we understand the emotional baggage of the families coming with, and the very high expectations that they have that the moment they bring them in, the problem is all going to be sorted out. But our objective, in handling the residents in the care facility is to ensure that we are making sure that every resident has a good quality of life. That means helping them maintain their independence to the extent possible, live a life of dignity, and ensuring that they are socially, cognitively stimulated on a daily basis, right? So in this context, the social worker plays a more supportive role in the care facility setting. Because we deal with so many people with dementia, the psychologist tends to take a more dominant role in this setting. So the areas where we've involved the social worker in Kshetra are in personal history taking. So we usually get from the families information on what these individuals were like when they were younger, what their preferences are, what they enjoy doing, how they like to express themselves, what they don't like. And, we try to engage with them with that information. And on a daily basis, we insist, or at least we try to insist, that all of our residents are involved in activity hours. So we have large group activities, which is your seated yoga, exercises to ensure that they're physically active. And we also have small group activities, which is games, things that can stimulate them cognitively. And so the social worker takes a lead in ensuring that these activities are being done regularly. And this is a professional who understands the importance of being socially engaged, of being cognitively engaged. And so they're able to drive home that point and ensure that everybody participates as much as possible. We also have a lot of caregivers who are involved in physically assisting the residents in the facility. And suffice to say, it's not an easy task to look after an elderly person whose care needs are very high. And so the caregivers constantly need to be trained, they need to be sensitized. Small things like, how do you speak in a respectful manner? How do you not get angry with somebody who's expressing a lot of aggression at you? How do you not get frustrated when you've not slept for 2 nights? How do you ask for a break? And how do you understand the importance of a schedule in the life of somebody living with dementia, a routine? And small things, because these people are coming from mostly from villages. They need to be sensitized to how to live in the city, how to conduct yourself. And this is something that we, the social worker plays a very important role in. And because the attrition rates of caregivers is very high, this is a constant task for them. While focusing on improving their soft skills, how do we also work on retaining them? And a lot of them come in with a lot of emotional baggage. So there's a huge amount of counseling that goes into ensuring that the emotional baggage that they're struggling with in their personal lives doesn't rear its head in the way they deliver care to an elderly person who is under their care. And we also organize intergenerational interactions. So we often have school children coming in to interact with the residents. That's another program that we are keen on kind of expanding. But it is wonderful to organize these kind of intergenerational programs, because there's a lot that both ends of the spectrum can really learn from each other. And one important quality that the social worker has, which probably the other members of the team are not able to bring to the table as much, is simply being present, simply being there, lending a ear, just listening to somebody who has a problem. That's a skill set that not everyone has. And the residents and the caregivers and the teammates themselves are under a lot of stress when they deliver care in the facility, because literally everything, the entire ecosystem is being handled by us, and families very seldom get involved. So just being there to listen, to help them de-stress, and to ensure that all the cogs in the machine are constantly functioning is something that we rely a lot on our social worker for. Some of the interventions that they've we've kind of had them take a lead on is we've introduced doll therapy to some of our residents, and this is somewhat a controversial therapy. And I think in India there is a lot of resistance to having toys that are typically seen as being meant for children being given to elderly people. There is a resistance from the elderly individuals themselves, and also from the families, that you're making me play with small children's toys. But the fact is that Montessori toys, dolls, these are all interventions that are being very actively explored in the Western parts of the world with a very open mind. And these are things that are actually very pleasurable for an elderly person to experience, just to kind of, to be stimulated by. And this is something that we are constantly educating the families on, educating the residents on, and kind of encouraging them to open up their minds to. And also, as people age, there is a tendency for quite a few of them to kind of self-isolate. They prefer their solitude. And so in the facility, we try to respect everyone's preferences of what kind of lifestyle they want to lead. But we also, ensure that solitude doesn't kind of trickle down into loneliness or isolation. So in the future, some of the other activities that we plan to undertake are we intend to administer stress scales on family caregivers who are availing care services from us, just to kind of understand a before and after. So if they're coming to us and availing our services, what are the level of stress with which they're coming to us? And then once we are delivering services to them, is there any reduction at all in the kind of stress that they're experiencing, just for us to kind of understand whether we are really bringing any value to the table or not. And another program that we're planning to do is a care coordination program, something like a care navigator. So we want to have a team that's going to work with family caregivers who are really struggling to manage care at home, to kind of open up the scope to more than just giving care, more than just sending caregivers and doctors and nurses on call, but to kind of manage the entire ecosystem, right from medication management to hospitalization, post-hospital care, to kind of assist them with decision making. A lot of aspects that need constant counseling, that need constant consultation and guidance on. So these are the activities that we plan for the future. If I have a minute, I would like to show you a video, if that's okay, just to kind of show you how we try to engage with our residents. I hope you'll be able to see it. So this is a lady who's living with advanced Alzheimer's. And we try to engage with them with dance, with music. And this gentleman, we are trying to engage him with dance. He's also living with advanced Alzheimer's. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, madam. Thank you, Pavitra, madam, for that lucid presentation with very nice pictures as well. That's a great thing, and you have really started with the services that is provided by your organization, and also you have also explained about the interdisciplinary team. So the various team that is being assisting for the elderly people, and especially you have also mentioned that the 75% of the elderly or with the dementia. So, and it is also lovely to know that how exclusively there are various care. I know that you have an administration, you have a qualified nurse, trained caregiver, psychologist, doctor, but as the topic is more appropriate towards the social workers, right? So you have really clearly envisaged the role of social workers, the involvement of the scope of involvement, the need for home visit, care need assessment, and care coordination. And moreover, the more important thing which you also focused on the counseling of the caregivers and counseling for the family situations and periodic review of the care needs. And you also gave a very important thing about the critical areas of interventions. And even I hope that through your picture, you are also able to see, we are able to see the intervention like doll therapy and all those things, right? So that's a great thing. And also ensuring the resident to remain socially active also. And you also focused on the future activities also, because that is one thing which we need to take note of it. That's the stress scale, right? So pre and post, which you also focus that professional care, especially because that kind of intervention study is much lacking in the Indian context, right? So that kind of intervention strategies and the pre and post study is to be taken care much. And also you focused on the care logistic and coordination. So support system by the family caregivers managing the care. So thank you, madam, for sparing your variable experiences and especially related to the social work. And dear participant, we will reserve the question towards the end. I think madam will be available till the end of this event, right? So we will reserve the question towards the end. Let me just call upon the next speaker, Ms. Yosini Kitswami from South Africa. I'm happy to introduce Ms. Yosini Kitswami. Is a divisional manager for operations at the Association of the Aged. It's called TAFTA, and is responsible for planning, organizing, leading, and directing the division to meet operational and strategic goals. She started as a social worker at TAFTA in the year 2013, and is passionate about working within the aged sector. So with this brief introduction about Ms. Yashini Kitswami, I welcome Madam to share your views to the august audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have sent through my presentation. If you would please share it on screen.
So who is going to make
Yeah, we'll do that. Prabhakar will do it.
Yeah, Prabhakar, please share the screen of Ms. Yashini Kitswami. Distance on.
I'm sorry, I don't have the presentation.
Don't worry. I will do it for you. No problem. I will just take a minute.
Okay.
I thought you got it, Prabhakar, so don't worry. Now I have to go back to Yashni, in the meanwhile, can you just talk something different?
That's fine.
Do it in no time, yeah.
Okay.
You can start, yeah, madam. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to say good afternoon, dear colleagues. I've already been introduced as Yoshina Kitswami. I'd like to thank the Heritage Foundation India for the opportunity to share today. I work for TAFTA, that's the Association for the Aged. We are a Durban-based nonprofit organization in KwaZulu-Natal, Durban. And we provide a basket of services to elders in our 13 buildings and surrounding communities. What I must say as a social worker is that working in the age sector is a calling and not just a job. I've been at TAFTA now for 8 years, and I continue to learn and see the changing narrative of the elders that we serve. I think while my presentation is being put up, I will go ahead. It's not a very long presentation. Today, my presentation is going to focus on geriatric social work, and I've titled it Pandemic to Possibilities. In terms of the mid-year population 2020 estimate in South Africa, it was 59.6 million people, while out of that, 5.4 million people are aged 60 and over. This was according to Statistics SA. As social workers in the field, what we also start realizing is that there's little specialized training in geriatrics in Africa and limited undergraduate focus on geriatric issues despite the trend of a growing aging population. It's against this backdrop that we try to understand the impact of the COVID pandemic and the response of the social workers in the age sector. The COVID-19 pandemic lockdown in March 2020 threw a curveball to the traditional provision of services to older persons. In South Africa, we have reached the third wave, and we are hopeful that the peak has passed. We can reflect on the role of social workers from the initial lockdown to the present time and how this has changed the practice landscape. So when we have looked at what our roles were during the pandemic and after, some of the key points that I would look at is the role of education and awareness, continuity of services, new demands and expectations, and then recovery in terms of emotional and practical support, self-care and risk reduction, supervision and support to social workers. So going back then to education and awareness. In President Cyril Ramaphosa's first speech in South Africa about the COVID-19 pandemic, he had neglected to mention South African social workers as part of the initial response team. This was indicative of the broader lack of understanding of the role of social workers in providing essential services in disaster management. Yet, within the various old age homes, social workers played a role in providing information on the virus, risk reduction measures, and adapting protocols to changing lockdown levels. Older persons were also mobilized to support the social workers as COVID champions, providing vital information and assistance during the lockdown. With the COVID pandemic being a new virus, it was also important for the correct information to be collected and collated. And older persons also became critical in assisting the social workers to pass on the message to other elders that were living within those buildings. Secondly, then with the vaccine rollout, once again, we found that within the homes, social workers played a role in assisting older persons to register for the vaccines, as well as liaising with our Department of Health to access these vaccines, and also then dealing with a myriad of questions related to the vaccine. In terms of continuity of services, over the period of the pandemic, you found that social workers, okay, we can go to slide 3. Social workers had to be agile to find new ways of supporting older persons, especially those in the community. We also found that at the buildings that we accommodate older persons at, social workers ended up staying in the buildings to support some of the elders who were experiencing loneliness, possibly anxiety, due to not being able to see their families. the inability to access services, and the fear of contracting the virus. Social workers were involved in monitoring older persons who were COVID positive, contact tracing, and a variety of other tasks to ensure that elders received meals, medication, and support. As an example, if you would look at this slide, you'd see a picture. That's our social work team at TAFTA during infection at one of the buildings, dressed up in PPE and busy in terms of going through to do contact tracing for approximately 600 elders within our building. So social workers had to take on various roles during the pandemic in terms of supporting and assisting other levels of staff. New demands and expectations. Reaching out to the elders in the community posed a problem during this period, especially where there was challenges due to access to technology, but then once again, the risk of infection. They had to be innovative to meet the needs of older persons and their families. And one of the examples that I remember in terms of the social work team sharing, I would call her Mrs. X. Mrs. X was an elder in the care unit, and her family was actually overseas. But during this time, she had reached a point where it was end of life, and the social worker, together with the nursing staff and the carers, contacted her family on a video call on WhatsApp. And during that period of time, as her family watched over her and prayed, Mrs. X then passed away. You know, these are touching moments, but it also had to show the way we can connect with family as well as other important persons in older persons' lives when we didn't have access to them. Secondly, technology was used where possible in the form of WhatsApp groups and SMSs. I think over this period of the pandemic, we found that we were on so many WhatsApp groups, where we had older persons from our committees. We would have groups with other staffing. You would find that even within our buildings and with our community clients, sometimes these boundaries were crossed where contact numbers were given over to community clients just so that we could maintain contact with them. With the easing of the regulations in June 2020, social workers resumed work, adapting to the new normal. So what did the new normal mean? The new normal meant working through various emotions, also then trying to deal with working in the community with restrictions, with PPE on. Then we looked at the third part of it, which is recovery, which was the emotional and practical support that was offered to older persons and their families. I think an important learning point from all of this is that we need to move away as well from the traditional or the stereotyped view of older persons. I think within our buildings, what we found was the resilience of older persons who have experienced life and their ability to almost ride this wave. When we looked at group work themes and what they were based around, it was more around the practical support and as well then the emotional sharing of loss and learning. The uncertainty of the pandemic as we move through the first wave to the third wave and the changing regulations, yes, it did create much anxiety for the social workers and I would say for older persons alike. What we also found was that creating and maintaining trusting, honest, and emphatic relationships via phone or internet, while still taking into consideration privacy and confidentiality, or in person with protective equipment. you also found that face-to-face meetings, even when they do take place now, we are using PPE. This tends to impede communication, the ability to pick up nonverbal cues, the experience of empathy, and then even the possibility of using touch as a gesture of caring or reassurance is restricted. When we look then at self-care and risk reduction, as social workers, we generally place the welfares of others above our own. But during this period, we need to remember that many social workers were dealing with their own fears of infection, family issues, and adapting to working remotely. Acknowledging and handling emotions, fatigue, and the need for self-care while working in unsafe and sometimes stressful circumstances. At some old age homes, though, as we moved through the pandemic, social workers were included in the vaccine rollout to older persons, which provided some relief. With regards to supervision and support to social workers, meetings were set up on Zoom until I think we all started feeling the disconnection from our colleagues. The changed environment to remote supervision or meetings with social distancing, sanitizing, and mask use is the new normal. Social workers in the older person sector reported feelings of anxiety, uncertainty, and working through the aftermath of the pandemic in terms of their own families, their friends, and then with the elders that they work with. So when we look back in terms of then what are the possibilities and what have we learned? What we do realize is that things are not going back to the way that they were. Without a doubt, COVID-19 has created change in the way we work as social workers. And it should be recognized that technology has had to be embraced, addressing emerging needs and mobilizing to innovatively continue with services. The role of social workers in providing essential services in disaster management. We do not know what is to come, but we do have an example to follow of how we worked through this pandemic. Advocacy and lobbying for older persons becomes critical for them to be involved in decision-making, which impacts on their lives. The traditional concepts of social work practice have been tested. The pandemic has tested the way social work services were provided, and once again showed the important role to provide public education and awareness on the prevention of transmission, assisting in ensuring food security, and giving psychosocial support. The opportunity also presented itself for social workers to be not just the ones giving care, but also receiving care. We move away then from our previous understanding of care of older persons, meaning, like I said previously, the stereotyped view of vulnerable older persons. This is not the case with all older persons. When social workers have been working with elders within the sector, you would find that you have a changing older person, a person that is more tech savvy, a person that is more involved, wanting to be an active participant in the decisions that are being made around their care and security. Lastly, I'd just like to look at rituals of reflection and remembrance. The pandemic has provided us with an opportunity to reflect on the strength in those around us and the invaluable resource that older persons represent, not just during the lockdown, but for us to take that forward and harness the strengths and energy that they have to offer. The possibilities of hope, life, and giving and receiving care as a social worker makes working with older persons a journey of learning. in the last slide that I have are just a few pictures of our social work team and just some of the elders. And when you look at it as well, you'll see even during the pandemic, the active engagement of elders as well in terms of making masks, providing meals to other elders, as well as maintaining our service centers, which were locked down, where staff were not able to come through. If you looked then on the second picture on the top, that was one of our team of elders together with 2 staff members that basically ran the center during that time. And then our group of cheering elders at the bottom, with active aging and participation at the centers. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Aishini Kitswami, madam, for your the great and excellent presentation. And it's really a good presentations, and especially on the association for the age. So the more focus related to the TAFTA, right? And you have really touched on the geriatric care, and I'm really moved by your topic itself, because the geriatric care from the pandemic to possibilities, right? So that's a really the great word, because that would really keeps us to bounce back to the normal. That's a resilience, right? So which you also, that is really a positive word. Now we talk, many of us talk about the strength-based social work approach, right? So, and you have been, but I've just gone back to talk about the strength-based social work, where how about we are bringing the people back to normality, and the way in which your presentation, and especially the roles of social workers, right? That has been a great, because right from the stereotyped way of the roles of social work, and now it is a kind of changing, and the changing scenario, and how the roles and responsibility of the social workers has to be changed, right? So that's a great sign, and you have really touched upon the various roles like education, awareness, new demands and expectation challenges, recovery of emotions, self-care, supervision and risk reduction. And you also mentioned about the supervision and support right system that is associated with the COVID-19, and you also mentioned that almost 600 elders have been taken care, right, by issuing the PPE, the protection equipment. And also you have just showcased the case studies that is related to the during the pandemic, how you are able to connect with the families, right? And how the technology also, because that's because of the, we talk about the digital era, right? We are in the digital era, and how this technology has to be utilized for the better service of the geriatric care, and that too the social workers, right? The present social worker, the young budding social workers should try to emulate such kind of things from the presentation that is made by Yoshina Kitswami. Hats off to you, madam, for thank you for your valuable presence and valuable presentation too, right? So thank you very much for your thing. And without take much of the time, let me take the privilege of introducing the fourth speaker of the day, Professor Shigamani Panir, and a very good friend of many of us in the field of social work fraternity. And Professor Shigamani Panir is a PhD holder from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and MSW and MA in Public Administration with PGDDA in Business Administration and DHA in Hospital Administration. He has FRCA in UK, FRSPH UK, a Raman Fellow, and PDF from USA. He is presently is working as a professor and head at the Department of Social Work, Central University of Tamil Nadu. Apart from that, I'm also happy to introduce that he is a coordinator for Center for Happiness too, right? I think his presentation will pave a way for more happiness, right, for the geriatric care and also to the others who are present here. Now it's over to Professor Shigamani for your presentation, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Sir, is my slides visible?
Little bit blurry, sir. Can you just fine tune your speaker? I mean, your audio system.
PPT is okay, sir.
PPT is started. Yeah, started.
No. Yeah, sound is okay, sir.
A little bit, sir, because I think.
Yeah.
What about others, sir? Gangadhar, sir,
We
can
are
you
not seeing anything. We are not seeing anything.
Yeah, that's why we are not seeing, and you are little bit. I mean, if you
Give
just
us the first screen. Give us the first screen.
1 minute, sir.
Yeah, you can do it again.
Now,
Yeah.
can you see me, sir?
Now make it full screen, sir.
Is it okay now, sir?
Yeah, fine, sir. Fine. Yeah.
Great. Hello, everyone. Most respected Dr. Gangadharan, Heritage Foundation, respected Professor Mangaleshwaran, Head the Department of Social Work, Bharidas University, colleagues, friends. Good evening, good afternoon to all of you. Let me take this opportunity to thank Dr. Gangadharan for the wonderful opportunity to share my views on evidence-based practice in elderly healthcare during and beyond COVID-19. And also, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be part of the organizing team. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the wonderful opportunity.
So sorry for Mr. Dr. Shigamani. Sorry for
Yes,
that.
sir.
I think there is in the chat. People are saying that your volume is audio is breaking. Can you just? I think the internet stability. Your volume.
Sir, I have maximum volume.
Okay. Go ahead,
Yeah.
sir. Yeah, I think
So
you can
maximum
increase
volume.
your own volume. I think that would be the alternate. Yeah, that will be the alternate. You have to increase your own volume.
There is an echo.
Yeah, echo is there. Yeah, maybe you would have switched on your speaker or something. Yeah,
that's why I'm using headphones. So
okay, sir. Because then I used to, even I also experience the thing. Even I also get it from the chat box too. That your volume is a little bit. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Please go ahead. Yeah,
I'll try to manage.
Yeah. Okay, sir. Okay, please go ahead.
So today's talk, I just contextualized 2-3 things, like evidence-based practice, social work, and then COVID-19. So the exact title of my talk is on evidence-based practice in elderly healthcare.
Not at all. Not at all.
So volume, it's from sir?
No, we cannot hear you. Your voices, your words are not heard by us.
Just a minute, sir. I'll just improve this.
Yeah.
Hello?
Better.
Hello?
Now better, sir. Yeah, fine.
Okay. I'm sorry. Sorry for
no issue. This
yeah.
always happens during this digital.
So this is my own perspectives on linking evidence-based practice with elderly healthcare. I would like to dedicate this perspective to the helping professionals and victims of COVID-19. So today's talk, I would like to look at 4 aspects. First thing about the critical evaluation of the development of evidence-based social work in elderly healthcare. The second part, it's about to explore the complexities of the paradigm shift and the emerging trends in elderly healthcare with social inclusion perspective. The third aspect, the emphasis on original work and to set professional solid grounds. So the way I have looked at the reviews, there are no substantial evidences to support their arguments on developing innovative intervention strategies. Therefore, I would like to look at the solid evidence to support the arguments related to interventions as well as policies. And then the last part is about the knowledge translations among institutional and non-institutional care service providers. So the literatures available on COVID-19 and elders by WHO talks about the three-dimensional aspects. It's about COVID-19 is changing elders' daily routines. The care and support they receive, their ability to stay socially connected and how they are pursued, which was reflected on dual burden on their health care, as it suggested that they were already in trouble having of several issues related to non-communicable diseases. COVID has added multiple dimensions. So elders are being challenged by requirements to spend more time at home, lack of physical contact with other family members, friends, colleagues, and so on, which led so much impacts on their mental health as well as their physical health. The risk of violence against elder people before and during COVID-19. Actually, the COVID-19 added much more impacts on their issues, especially related to the violence. And then the elders abuse, neglect, exploitations, and victimization. So according to UN has strongly advocated two aspects of elderly care during the pandemics. That was on right as well as the dignity aspect. The literature, the emerging literatures, which was strongly advocating the relevance of developing more evidences, especially the fields like medicine, engineering, management, including social work. So the helping professions are increasingly depending on the evidence-based practice, whether it's working with individuals, groups, or communities, or even the other specific groups, including elders. So these days, much literature has developed focusing on the evidences. So the elderly care during this period has emerged as a serious concern regarding the quality, access, and workforce capacity. Evidence-based practice as one of the most important initiatives for improving quality of care for elders. So this is all about the best practices and then what we can learn from those best practices. Economic and physical barriers to care, recognition of health issues in elders, caregivers and health providers, pain management, long-term care, design and age-friendly spaces. So the burden of elderly health care, so according to World Health Organizations, they've given a lot of data on the global burden of diseases, which is about more than 23% connected with the elderly people, which is all about NCDs, non-communicable diseases, and then the growing population of aging, primary and secondary care preventions needed at this juncture, social determinants of elderly health care, and so on. So out of all this, the certain myths and realities are associated. Number one, it's about the medical care cost, which is directly connected with the out-of-pocket expenditures, as well as there are evidences about unnecessary prescriptions and diagnosis and outdated and inefficient treatments. So with specific reference to India, according to the census report from 1961 to 2011, even 2021, certain projected data says like there's an increasing trend which is directly connected with work, income, economic independence, health, and well-being. That means what? That means there's an urgent need for elder care and institutional and non-institutional care support with the help of evidence of evidences. The data from certain states in India, so Kerala and Tamil Nadu has the highest numbers. And again, in these two states, we have strong state support to promote more healthcare facilities. The burden on of diseases in older people, according to the available data. So it's much more about non-communicable diseases, including cardiovascular diseases, cancer, chronic respiratory diseases, and so on. So the two things, like the available data and the problems faced by people are increasing at the same time across the nations, and even the global levels. There is a shortage of medical and psychiatric social workers in the field of geriatric care. And then the another aspect is about lack of collaborations and coordinations between service providers, including the academicians as well as the practitioners. So therefore, these days, like one of the emerging arguments in the field of social work itself is that evidence-based social work practice. There's a trend suggested by Edward Deming. He says, like, without data, you are just another person with an opinion. Much of those case studies you might have heard or you might have read reviews. So the evidence here, the evidence which will suggest the unmet needs of elders, especially on mental health, and also the evidences which will recommend the strong interventions which will yield good results. So literatures in evidence-based practice, which was earlier emerged from the field of evidence-based medicine, which was suggesting like this, the conscientious and judicious use of current best evidence from clinical care research in the management of individual patients. So according to the researchers from US and Canada, they were strongly advocating in social work field, especially in elderly care, that the adoption of such kind of methods which will bring good results. The use of a systematic approach to formulating and answering clinical questions by quickly finding and evaluating the current best evidences. That means here the integrating individual clinical expertise and the best external evidences which will bring positive change in the literature. So the outcome of evidence-based practice which will bring in-depth analysis of the issues, exploring the issues, field phenomenon, provide the first descriptions, so that we will have the first-hand experience to develop intervention strategies, which will also develop us to exploring new relations by collecting and analyzing data, providing empirical data and analyzing as a basis for developing a new theories or evaluating the existing theories, or even testing the new existing theories. It will help us in documenting the effect of interventions, treatments, and programs. So far what I've experienced in available literatures, so much of evidences were really missing. Most of those studies were based on Maggie Noodle's approach, collecting data from few respondents and generalizing those aspects, which is not going to help in terms of learning from the best practices. Therefore, the evidence and the outcome of evidence-based practice here is that it will provide knowledge base as an empirically grounded basis for political, administrative, and practical decision making. So the COVID has exposed all of us in terms of realizing the individual isolation, especially among the elders, emotional and risk perception, disaster panic, fake news and misinformation, the consequences of isolating the elderly. It's a risk of cardiovascular diseases, autoimmune, neurocognitive, and mental health problems, and so on. So aligning individuals and collective interest, social isolations, loneliness, increased stigma and discrimination. So as well as it was exposed much more on the mental health and psychological impact on elders. The COVID-19 pandemic had made the mental health conditions worse across age groups, especially among elders. So people were unable to access mental health support, lack of face-to-face support, stress, anxiety, as well as other mental health issues. So one group faces additional risks and consequences, as well as the anxieties. People with disability and chronic illnesses, especially within elders, elderly groups, people with disabilities and chronic illnesses had faced even multifold healthcare impacts, physical health as well as the mental health, which was disproportionately impacted due to attitudinal, environmental, and institutional barriers. So the pre-existing health conditions that makes them more susceptible to the virus infection. In fact, even the death rates across the globe, which is much more among this group. And lack of alternative livelihood opportunities unable to survive, especially in Indian context. Indian context, elders, those who are involved in informal sector, due to the lockdown, they faced such kind of problem. Discrimination, other barriers in accessing livelihood and income support. And then within elders, so women faced much more difficulties, according to the available data. So they were more prone to COVID-19 infection and chances to death and post-COVID scenario. And now the problem, even after COVID-19, even third or fourth wave, again, bringing back to the normal life with the support system, which is going to be a big challenge for every stakeholders in the system, including the government, private practitioners. So linkages with community transmission and comorbidity situation, which was the challenging task for the elders. The risk of severe illness, especially on COVID-19 increases with much more about their age, and then issues related to the vaccine also become a bigger issue. There was a paper published in Science Journal. So this is a global comparisons. So two arguments I would like to highlight here in this paper in Science. So age above 65 years, 75 years, and 85 years. So maximum data, the case fatality rates, predictions of time to death, and then the follow-up, vaccination things. So most of the things is connected with the age limit. You know, they were finding it difficult to access the available essential care, as well as they were facing major problem. So as per the UN data suggested that the COVID-19, which had a major impacts on elders, especially on economic well-being, mental health, and then family relationship, vulnerability, life and death, and abuse and neglect. Therefore, what I felt like, so during this period, as well as beyond COVID-19, what is needed for the elders, like the basic rights of individuals, life satisfaction, independent life, quality of life, economic growth and competitiveness, reducing in the medical care cost, dignity and challenges. As those data was suggesting that it's the right time we must take action again to develop such kind of supporting system for the elders. Therefore, the basic elements of evidence-based practice, which is suggesting that for every level of interventions and policies, we need data. So based on data, based on the best practices, we need to develop the intervention strategies, like the need for healthcare, including rehabilitative programs for the elders, including the clinical interventions, community-based interventions, daycare, residential care, hospital care, home-based care, and so on. So the emerging trends in Indian context, there are certain arguments in favor of evidence-based practice or against evidence-based practice. So the review suggests that general critics related to the practice of evidence-based practice, these days, indeed it is necessary. So what they suggest, non-science-based practices based on intuition, experts or peer opinion, traditions, and anecdotal experiences rather than most updated scientific research findings, which is not going to give you good results. So intentions of increasing transparency by use of up-to-date intervention strategies needed at this junction. Then lack of quality of service and ethical issues also the concern. Advances in science and technology, which is a kind of support system for these professionals to develop evidences. Challenging role of social work schools to address complexities in societal problems and macroeconomic financial crisis. So what the evidence suggests that during the crisis times that we need to develop an innovative intervention strategies which should be based on the available data. The widening gap between research and professional practice, that's also another dimension in evidence-based practice. Academicians will work different, and then the practitioners will work different. So what my argument is that indeed it's the right time to integrate both the aspects in one, with the help of the transdisciplinary or multidisciplinary perspectives, and then the demand for public accountabilities. So the another dimensions in evidence-based practice is the governance issues, like the lack of political will, lack of analytical investigation framework for root cause and consequences of elderly issues. So pattern of social transformation and globalization mismatch, missing relationship between economy and elders. And then the introduction of like user fees or privatization or globalization in the form of new public management, which will also be a concern in the field of elderly care. So as we have seen in the literatures, the elders were facing the dual burden on health, especially during the COVID period, like livelihood, lack of safety nets, health, NCDs, poverty, nutritional issues, crime, lack of participations, and then the affordability issues. So again, this data suggests that, like even before COVID-19, those elders were facing severe problems. I would like to highlight one case from Delhi. So there's a case from Ms. Savitri Devi, what she says, I rely on my son and daughter-in-laws provides meals and medicines. My daughter-in-law orders me to wash clothes, utensils, and if I deny, she threatens me of not giving me meals and medicines. So like that, several cases are there. They talks about the kind of problem they were facing within the family itself. So in this time, like what we need to develop more evidences, and we need to develop more innovative intervention strategies. The top 10 chronic morbidity indicators as suggested by WHO. So living arrangements, familial supports, which is needed at this juncture. So mental health issues like economic changes, urbanization, industrializations, increased migration, shift in value systems, overemphasis on individualism, which posed huge impacts on their mental health issues, especially on self-isolation. Therefore, bringing the family involvement in patients' care and recharge plans, and then post-care treatment, rehabilitation facilities, and patients' mobility and self-care needed at this juncture. Those aspects also requires scientific investigation in terms of bringing innovative interventions. And then the sources of their medical care, as per the data again by the WHO, suggests that family support system is the most preferred aspect, as well as the family more support to these elders, like with the non-institutional support system. Therefore, the evidence-based practice in the management of welfare policies for elderly, which will require more research, and then more original research papers on issues related to health, finance, legal law, social justice and empowerment, then the post-retirement plan, and then development aspects. So the overview of the current programs aimed at elderly care in India, the available policies. So there is a difference between the available policies and the practices. The published few research papers were recommending strongly that indeed it's the right time. We need to rework on those available policies in terms of bringing more user-friendly intervention strategies to those elders. And then another aspect is developing multi-stakeholders participation in delivering effective healthcare services, not just only healthcare services, health and well-being services. So need assessment. So the evidence-based practice which will provide ready available data by understanding the situation analysis and developing a priority basis, which including the providing timely interventions involving elders, empowerment, healthy livings, and so on. And then the safety net, integrating the scientific based evidences into day-to-day interventions, like understanding the root cause of the particular problem and then developing intervention strategies. There's another paper published by MDPA, Designing an Urban Space for the older persons in Asian cities. In this paper, what they recommend that the service availability, accessibility, as well as affordability indeed necessary at this juncture. So the evidence-based process, this is unlike the research papers, like we need to develop a research questions based on that, conduct scientific search and locate relevant evidences, apprise those evidences, integrate such evidences in the form of case synthesis, data synthesis, and evaluate each items and develop the intervention strategies. So we need to move beyond the available theories on evidence-based social work practice with the focus on availability and accessibility to academic literatures, develop with the more funding, and then develop willingness to designate the right kind of interventions. So what constitutes the evidences here? The main aspects here based on the published work, accuracy of diagnosis and assessments. Every level, even identifying the beneficiaries, you need to apply the right kind of methods to develop a scientific base so that the data can be used for developing a multiple intervention strategies. So one method could be systematic reviews or meta-analysis suggested by Campbell collaborations. Campbell collaborations in Norway, they do conduct several evidence-based practices in elderly healthcare by adapting systematic reviews or meta-analysis by bringing search selections, critical appraisals, and synthesis of the best practices. Now, with that framework, can we apply the similar kind of methods in Indian context? But there is a problem here. The shortage of coherence and consistency of scientific evidence, so that it would be very difficult to develop innovative intervention strategies. Difficulties in applying evidences to the particular individuals or case, the greater need to develop essential practice skills. In fact, we do have knowledge, skills, and then the missing components of competencies. Investment in good quality research, it's a big question mark. Increased deep professionalization, because here everybody claims they're all social workers. In that context, how are we going to develop an innovative intervention strategies? So short-term contract and no salary employment for the qualified social workers, which means there's a brain drain again, like ability to practitioners to employ skills. The scarcity of original research that can guide interventions. We don't have much studies in our context. We need to follow certain studies from other contexts. So ideological resistance for change. Some of those qualified and experienced persons, they were having so much of resistance to accept the innovative methods and techniques. Therefore, these are the challenges in Indian context to develop evidence-based practice. So towards an action plan for geriatric knowledge translation in India. So what I'm suggesting here is that, just every level, we need to have a scientific base to develop plan and interventions as well as the follow-up strategies. So based on that, I would like to propose the 5 set of recommendations, the challenges of knowledge, of values, and of legitimations required for the research direction. Schools of social workers should play an active role in supporting an adoption and the staying power of evidence-based practice by using the vast expertise within the programs, evaluate the practices to ensure agreed standards. Authoritative professional council of social work profession in India needed at this juncture to frame efficient code as well as the practice manuals, and then the long-term care facilities. So therefore, this juncture, based on the individual practices or based on institutional experiences, so high time we need to compile those cases. We need to develop a lot of evidence-based practice on their work, and then those things can be replicated in the other parts of the country. So the scientific interventions is missing these days. That's what, since the first slide on some adjusting that, indeed it's necessary to have the evidence base to develop innovative interventions to deal with the loneliness, depression, and then to support the optimal care and support system. So the limitations here, adequacy of the scientific evidences is really missing, limited limits of database on randomized controlled trials in this context, individualized evidences, operationalizing evidence-based practice is a big question mark here, limits of meta-analysis, further we need a statistical analysis, potential bias in reporting the evidences by the researchers, lack of extensive support system in our country. So therefore, these are the aspects we need to look at it. So with the following observations, I would like to conclude my talk. Evidence-based practice holds a lot of promises for improving the quality and effectiveness of service provided by the practitioners as well as the policymakers. That's what the available data from other countries suggest, that the evidence-based practice, which will draw the route map for the effective intervention, which will also help us in terms of redefining the relationship, roles, and responsibility of individuals, families, and the states. Therefore, this is a high time it should move away from the traditional practices into the innovative practices such as evidence-based practice. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Shigamani. So I think really you meant by the evidence-based research, right? So whatever these things you have made a presentation, the lucid presentation you have made with the plethora of information. I would say that you have collated several research activities, not only in India and abroad too. Right, so that's a great sign and a good presentations indeed. I would appreciate Dr. Shigamani for really enriching us, and that is also the need of the hour also, because our research orientation and especially the social work research orientation has to go from the descriptive kind of research to the intervention based research, because many of our studies are based on mostly on descriptive. Of course, I don't deny that descriptive research has to be there, right? But how we march, I mean, you take forward from the descriptive research to a kind of intervention study. So that's really a great study, and you have also given, I mean, almost 5 kinds of recommendations, and also the limitations, because we need to overcome certain limitations, and that's a very elaborate study which have really focused. And I think the educationalist and the people who are really working for the geriatric care has to take note of these kinds of evidence-based work, which would really, I mean, help us to enrich and enlarge our research work. So thank you, Professor Sigamani, for your excellent presentation. And without taking much of the time, let me call upon the last but not the least speaker, Mr. Godamas Michael, if I'm correct in pronouncing Mr. Godamas Michael is a graduate of social work, obtained a master's degree from the University of Athens, Greece, Office of Chief Executive Officer. He has the work of monitoring of the meetings, monitoring and reporting, support for the creations of the presentation for the speeches, conferences, etc. His company name is Akitos. Am I right? Akitos, a colorful and vivid organization of elderly care with a capacity of 288 beds in 4 units, introduces a special and a unique model care. So with this a brief introduction, let me invite Mr. Godas Michael for his brief presentation. It's over to you, sir.
Good evening to everybody. It's 5 o'clock at evening in Greece right now. Some things have changed the last days for my CV. I'm now an external partner in Actios, the elderly care units, and I am I'm also an external partner to 50 Plus Hellas, that is an NGO for the rights of people of 50 years old and over. And also I'm the coordinator and scientific manager of ECOS, which is a shelter of unaccompanied minors. But I have been in the elderly care units, and I have worked with people of the third age for a lot of years, either in humanitarian field crisis, such as the refugees camps in Greece, and also now with the pandemic of COVID-19 in Actios. As I have heard from the speakers before, Mrs. Yoshima and Dr. Pamiris Gamani have given very detailed and very scientific speeches that I personally really appreciate. So I'm a humble social worker, so I will speak by this position as a clinical social worker and what we face and what is our role and the challenges of the social workers in an elderly care unit during the health crisis. So we will start with the social work 4 W's, which is who, why, when, and what. Meaning that who is a social worker, how we can recognize the social worker inside an elderly care unit during the health crisis. Why is she or he there? Why is the social worker? And how, when, and does the social worker intervene? And how, and what he is doing. So the social worker is first of all a trained professional. He or she is skilled to manage difficult or uncomfortable situations, meaning situations that are difficult for the other professionals, either caregivers or maybe nurses and doctors that sometimes they are not so skilled to manage the psycho-emotional situation of an elder resident or an elder patient. Okay, the social worker can do the outreach and the monitoring, and is prepared to respond in emergent cases, either within the community, with the family, or individually with the elder resident of the unit. He has a high sense of social responsibility. he or she looks at the individuality and the rights of the patient, the resident, or the service user with a perception as much as scientific, also in a reality, in a reality base. He has a wide perception of the role of the family. The people of third age living in an elderly unit sometimes feel lonely, or they have a very big need to be with their families, to feel that they are near to their families. So the social worker is the median among them, and he knows the whole family history. She can speak with the nurse, he can speak, or she can speak with the, I'm sorry about the he or she. And he or she speaks with the doctor, the nurses, the psychologist. Okay, he has clinical knowledges upon the situation of the user, communication skills, consultation skills, organizing skills, and the risk or emergency identification ability. So why is a social worker in a crisis field, in a health crisis field? First of all, as we said, he's prepared upon this. He has increased, or the social worker has increased the empathy. Okay, he or she doesn't go just to do the work that it's about to be done. Okay, it's not a nurse, it's not a caregiver. The social worker has a high role upon the consultation, upon the giving the feedback. Okay, he or she has to be the observer of the whole situation. What is happening? Where is the real need? What are the target groups, real needs in medical, in social, and in psychological base. Also, we don't forget that he's a part and a member of the multidisciplinary team. So he has a good knowledge of the needs of the colleagues, meaning the needs, psycho-emotional needs, okay? And he can recognize and can support a colleague of a professional of the wider professionals, and he or she can recognize the burnout, the tiredness of the others. The social worker will speak and support them. Okay, and also the social worker has the ability to recognize the interference limits. Okay, and how to refer somebody to other services, either to psychologists or to occupational therapists, or to another hospital or to another unit if it is needed. So when does the social worker intervene, and what the social worker does during or before or afterwards? So this is the three when. Before, in the here and now, so meaning the place and the time during the crisis period. As we said, we have said the social worker is a member of the multidisciplinary team. So they prepare all together the plan, the crisis plan, how to intervene, and the protocols. He organizes or she organizes the forms, the referrals, and also the network that is aware and built before. He gives information, he informs the community, he raises the awareness in the community, and we can have as a paradigm the situation right now of the COVID-19. The social worker of the unit can be a member of his close or her close community, of the local community. Okay, he or she can cooperate with the authorities representing the unit that he or she provides the services. Okay, and when the time comes, he will intervene. He will consult and support. He will activate all this network that was pre-built. Okay, he will be the reference person among the family, okay, and the unit and the professionals of the unit. Also, he or she can be the median among the nursing, the medical staff, the family, the services, either the services of the unit that he or she works, or with the hospital, with the support groups, okay, with the state services. Meaning that the social worker is a skilled person, is a trained person above the state bureaucracy, something that it is on a very big lag to the other professions, such as the nurses, the doctors, the psychologists, the occupational therapists, the physical therapists of the unit. And also afterwards. A lot of people face post-traumatic stress after a health crisis. Maybe for 1 year, maybe for 2 years, depending on what are their experiences. The social worker will support in cases of loss of mourning or grieving of the family, if they have lost their people, their beloved ones. Okay, it's a health crisis. As we can see in the pandemic, the third age, I'm sorry for mentioning, but it's the age with a high level of, a high rate of death. Okay, so afterwards, the family needs support, the friends need support. Also the other residents that have seen a lot of their friends, okay, because people living in a unit, if they are active and they can feel the other residents are friends, as a small family, if they live a lot of years in a unit, okay. So we can support on this. We can support by groups, by supporting groups, or by referring them to supporting groups of the community. So we can reactivate the residents in the local community. Challenges. We have a lot of reactions. Okay, first of all, the elderly residents. Some of them will be disorientated by a new reality. Speaking also for the pandemic of COVID-19, it was something that even people that were 60 years old, 70 years old, or generally over 50 years old, maybe have not lived something like that, especially in the West world. Okay, the last pandemic we have, except the SARS, the SARS, it was before maybe 100 years. In Greece, the last large pandemic was in the middle of 60s and 50s after the Second World War. Okay. The residents, the elderly people, are getting out of their daily routine and their convenience. A lot of times they are called to live into their rooms all the day because of health crisis, because of their frailty, their frail health situation, because of the danger of getting the virus or giving the virus, so they have to be restricted. Something that is, even for us, that maybe we are younger, okay, it's very problematic a lot of times. We cannot keep with this rhythm. They don't have information. I think that either Ms. Yoshima or Mr. Panir spoke about the mass media and the social interfaces, the social applications with a lot of wrong information that they give, or pseudosciences. Okay, so we have to inform them a lot about what is happening, why it is happening, why we intervene like this, why their life changes, in order not to feel stigmatized or victimized or abused. Okay. We have a lack or reduce of activity. They are not getting out of the house. They don't have their, as we said before, their daily routine, either gymnastics or occupational therapy, or getting out and drink a tea or a coffee with their friends for some time. Fear of reducing the life durance, of the fear of the death and the vulnerability. They're old people, okay? They are anxious about this. And this is something that it is real, it is happening, and we know it, okay? And the challenge of social worker upon a health crisis, it comes exactly upon this, how we're gonna deal, okay, with the frail situation of the health of an elder person, and the fear of death, okay? They feel also lonely, and they feel abandoned, either from their friends, because of the lack of communication of their relatives, and the biggest difficulty, we meet it at people with dementia or Alzheimer's disease. The family, the family caregivers, or even the relatives, or even I'm sorry, I didn't write it, the grandchildren, okay? That they were used to see the grandmother, the grandfather, to visit them, to speak to them, okay? The daughters and the sons, they feel anxiety for their parents, or for their relatives. The quality of life, they cannot control it, they cannot see it, okay? We don't have cameras into the elderly care units, except the disaster. But most of the times we don't have cameras inside. The quality of health. Is it going well? Is he or is my mother or my father or my aunt or my auntie or my grandfather in danger? How does he feel? They also have the fear of loss. Eventually, sometimes they feel guilt, okay, because they also feel that they have left their own people, their beloved people, with strangers into an elderly care unit or a nurse house, okay? The distorted information also is a problem for them. From the mass media, the Facebook, the pseudosciences, we have all seen what is happening now with the vaccinations, or if the scenarios about the COVID-19. Health workers and professionals, they are tired. Sometimes they are called to be in a unit more than 48 hours or more than 2 days. Sometimes they are called to live into the nursing house and during a health crisis. They feel anxiety. They are facing a burnout sometimes, okay? They grieve. They grieve about their patients. They grieve about their family. Most of the times, it's not only the small world of the elderly care unit. A pandemic is all around our lives. They have to work, but also their minds, their thoughts are back to their families, back to their friends. What is happening with them, with their children, okay? Am I, as a nurse or a psychologist, or generally a care professional, am I going to take the virus from inside the unit and take it back to my house? Will I put in danger my children, my husband, or my wife? And And also there is the fear of the anxiety and malpractices. Somebody who works a lot of hours, if there is not a supportive situation and a monitoring situation, they feel they fear about having a bad practice. So they will come to the social workers to speak about it. We are there to support our colleagues, to listen to them. It's very important to listen to them. We are not all the time within the field. Okay, as I said before, we have the ability and the better situation to monitor. I'm sorry. These days in Greece, we have 47 degrees. So it's very hot and my throat is a little bit dry. So due to the study of the International Federation of Social Workers for the 2020, it comes to the conclusion that it is very difficult for the social workers to maintain the trust, the honesty, and the empathy during the pandemic and the health crisis. It is very difficult because we cannot have the person-to-person contact and the communication proximity. A lot of times we come in a difficulty to prioritize the service users. Do we have to follow the national, the international, or the organizational guidance and protocols? And what about our ethics as professionals? Okay. Do the self-limits are more limited than before? What are our emotions? Do we feel a burnout state? How do we recognize it is a new reality? Health crisis, it's not our common reality. It's not our everyday life, everyday work life. It's out of the norm. So during a health crisis, nothing is a fact and nothing is guaranteed. What shall we do? Be more specific to the information that we give. Be more realistic, not only supportive, giving a realistic image of the reality to our service users, to the families, to the relatives. It's very helpful. Communicate more with the medical and nurse staff. Keep a strict follow-up record of the residents on a daily basis, if possible. Keep an open line of communication with the family. Ask from family and friends to communicate more with the residents. If it is available, they can use the teleconference platforms like Skype, Zoom, or anything that is available. Try to keep residents motivated by speaking or involving them in activities, even for those who are bedridden. Expand the residents and elderly care unit support network. Communicate with hospitals, NGOs, support groups, residential and local authorities. Organize support groups for the colleagues. Be an active member of the multidisciplinary teams of the elderly care unit. Share the opinions and the ideas that you have. Be updated upon the needs. Okay. The social workers are not alone. Even if it seems difficult to keep updated due to the emerging situation of a health crisis, try to learn more about the situation that you face. Search about the information. The previous speaker, Dr. Paneri, gave a lot of information about this. Okay, somewhere a same or similar situation has been faced again. Keep up with the international guidelines. Keep up with the national guidelines. The legislation, the rules can protect the residents, the colleagues, and yourselves. Inform the employers about the legislation and the rules if they are not informed about the continuous changes. Inform the relatives about it. They can have a better perspective, a more realistic perspective of the situation and why we are facing this kind of difficulties. And sometimes we cannot help them. Also, this is a reality. Sometimes we cannot help. We can be supportive, but this is it. Multidisciplinarity and training are very important. Okay. The share of information shall not be faced as a taboo. Okay. Ask from your supervisors to organize more multidisciplinary discussions. Share and ask the information for the situation that you face or for cases. Discuss about your cases. Inform your colleagues about your part of work, what a social worker does in this kind of situation. Ask to be informed for your colleagues' intervention. How do they intervene? The nurses, the doctors, the psychologists, everybody that you work with. It is very important because you can synchronize your work. Ask to be trained in a new consultation and support techniques, even from another unit, or in a common training. Ask and share experiences within your unit, another unit, or even an institution. And what are our personal challenges? Fear of the family, we have talked about it, sense of loneliness and lack of support. A lot of times we feel that nobody understands us or the situation we face. Sometimes, me personally, I was getting back to my house, I was speaking to my wife and my children about what was happening, and they couldn't feel it, okay? We had to discuss a lot about it. I had to describe a lot about the situation again and again until they put themselves and have a better perspective about it. Okay, speak with your mentors. If you are new colleagues on new colleagues or new social workers, speak with your mentors. It is very important to keep your emotional health in a good level. It lets you be a better professional. and the most important, stay socially active. Okay, we have to analyze our emotions and our limits. Do not hide your emotions under the carpet. Okay, speak about your fears, about your agonies, share your feelings. It is very important to be open on this, to let the other colleagues and your family, how do you feel? It connects more with the team. It connects more with the family. It brings us more together. A speaker from yesterday talked about it, about how he felt the distance among the family members getting declined during the pandemic. And I think that I finished.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, I think.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry about the.
No problem. I think you had some throat problem. Okay, no problem. So, dear participant, we are coming to the end of the fifth day, the penultimate day of this 6 days international webinar on the social work profession in geriatric care, and I hope that the 5 speakers have well addressed with their respective areas of operations. I would say that they have really done a justice in terms of justifying their own activities in terms of the geriatric care, and along with the social work profession, touch with the social work profession they had. So that was a very wonderful sessions we had with the 5 speakers. And we started with Ms. Shalini Ulster from Bangladesh, where Mr. Shah, we should thank the Saurav Subhatra, right? Subhatra, who are really translating the activities of the Shalini Ulster, and especially on the Subhatra Trust. wherein they focused on the activities related to the various things. For example, the housing infrastructure, and mainly they are focusing on the rural focus, the one-stop care thing, micro care entrepreneurs, care assessment to improve the integrated awareness program, and moreover the skill development training programs, right? And that also been focused more by the organization, and that was a really a wonderful sharing of experiences, right, by the Subhatra Trust, and we thank wholeheartedly Madam Shalini Alster and Saurav Sabutra for that presentation. And the second speaker, Ms. G. Pavitra, and she has really addressed on the role of social workers in geriatric care, perspectives from the private geriatric care service providers, and she also focused on the service provided by the home healthcare services by the Kestra assisting living, and her focus on dementia care facilities. And she also gave that delivering the dementia for almost the 75% of the elderly are from dementia, right? So, and she also sketched the need for the role of social workers, the scope of involvement, the significance of the home visit, care need assessments, the care planning, care coordination, and more appropriately, she also touched upon the counseling caregivers, the counseling family, and the periodic review care. So that's a great thing. And also she also more focus on the critical areas of interventions, and also the various interventions that is being done by their organization, like doll therapy, ensuring the residents to remain socially active, addressing the mindset resistance, and all those things that was things. And also she also focused on the future plans, like care logistic and the intervention studies that they are going to focus. So on behalf of the Heritage Foundation and our institution, I wholeheartedly thank you, madam, for your a great presentations. And the third speaker from South Africa, Ms. Yazini Kitswami, she belongs to the association for the aged, TAFTA, and she also focused on the geriatric social work, and also she mentioned that 15.6 million, that 4.5 million of their population are the aged above 60 years, and she also mainly focused on the topic called pandemic to possibilities, right? So more on the growing agings related to the COVID pandemic and how they are tackling the third wave. And I hope that the lessons has to be embraced or by our countries, right? Especially in the elderly care, how the roles and responsibilities of a social workers need to be taken care, and role of education and new demands and expectation, recovery system, self-care system, the supervision and support of the things, and how the technology is also playing an important role, right? So that was the thing which was being focused by Ms. Ashina Kitswami on behalf of the Heritage Foundation, Hyderabad, and other institution, the partnering institution. I wholeheartedly thank you, madam, for sparing your valuable time for this webinar. And the fourth speaker, my good friend, Dr. P. Sigamani, and has given a lot, ample of evidence-based practices on the elderly care during and beyond COVID-19. So that was a really, as I told you, enriching things where with the evidence-based research, and moreover, how this evidence-based research can be put into practice in our country as well as abroad. So that is a good presentations by the Sigamani. And the last speaker, Mr. Godmas Michael from Greece, right? He is working with the Akitos, And his major focus was on the roles and challenges of the social workers during a healthcare in a long-term care unit. And he has come out with the 4 Ws, right? Like who, why, when, and what. So that's a thing which we have learned from today's speakers. And I hope that today's session was more energetic, informative, and more enlightening, right? So with this, the knowledge, right? And the more often thing is that this knowledge has to be disseminated to our own students, the practitioners has to take these messages so that the major salient features that is being put forth by the speakers can be put into practices, right? And more and academic institutions can take much care on doing kind of research and create a kind of intervention model so that our social work profession will flourish, right? And moreover, and adding the literature, that's more important because we are already having a good number of literatures, and these kinds of things would definitely add a knowledge to the social work professions. So with this few words, I think that we are nearing 8 o'clock of Indian Standard Time. So without taking much of the time, I thank all the participants who have been actively taking part due to the time facilities. We are not able to just give a time for your Q&A, and hope that you can send a mail across to those people, and I hope that they will be in a position to answer your queries. So once again, I thank you all the participants who have participated through this Zoom platform and as well as through the Facebook live stream. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mangaleshwaran, for being very patient.
Yes, no problem.
Very demanding session, very interesting.
Yeah, of course.
Very, very interesting.
Both challenging and interesting also.
Yeah, so very nice that we could listen. I think very happy that we could do. Yeah. It's already late. Let's close it. We'll be in touch tomorrow. Tomorrow is the last day.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be there, sir. I'll be there.
Take care. Thanks. Thanks a lot, all of you.
Thank you all. See you. Take care. Be safe.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. All the best, sir. Thank you, sir. Be safe and take care. Thank you.